half, and I've done as much as I can to try and trim and trim and trim. So I'm going to try and cut out a lot of my stories because they waste a lot of time. So I'm going to encourage you at this point to get your writing materials. You're going to take a lot of notes, so have a pad. Let's be as engaging as possible. Use the chat box, but definitely take notes. Definitely take notes. Definitely take notes. We ready? Know that you've got your notes ready. We are going to have a good time. So let me start by saying this. Leaders are revealed in crisis. Leaders are revealed in crisis. If you want to be a leader, one of the ways to know a leader is that leaders, or how leaders are formed, is the leaders are revealed in crisis. Now, if leaders are revealed in crisis, the best thing we can do is let tough times, let crisis, let conflict, let unprecedented times, whatever we choose to call it, these things are there for us as an opportunity to mold us and shape us. So we should allow conflicts, unprecedented times, crisis. They are there to shape us. They are there to mold us, and they're there for us. This is the most important thing, to learn as much as possible. In other words, don't waste crisis. In other words, don't waste conflicts. Don't waste unprecedented times. Instead, you use them to grow and become better. What do you do with crisis? You use it as an opportunity to grow and become better. So you and I should never be people who would waste a crisis. So the question is this: what do you do during difficult times? How do you handle adversity? How do you handle problems? How do you not waste a crisis? So let me start by defining what a crisis is. Now, well, in the dictionary term, a crisis is a time. Now, pay attention as you write. In dictionary terms, a crisis is a time of intense difficulty or danger. That's what the dictionary says, a time of intense difficulty or danger. Now, in medical terms, it's a turning point. When doctors talk about crises, you know, they're either coming, when they say they're coming to a crisis, it's either it's about to get better or it's going to get worse. Now, in Greek, it's a decision. A crisis is a decision. So before you give me credit for all that, I listened to my mentor, John Maxwell, recently define crisis, and that's where I got that. And he merged those three thoughts from the dictionary, from the medical community, and from the Greek language. And here's how he defined his new definition of crisis. And this is what I want you to write. A crisis is an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that would be a turning point that would either make us better or worse. I'll say that again. A crisis is an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that would be a turning point that would either make us better or worse. And I really kind of love that definition. I love that combination of the three sources and putting it together, because I think that's really what a crisis is. And you could say that because a crisis is normally a turning point. It's a turning point. And because it's a time of great difficulty, and crisis would either make or break us. So we really need to know how to handle crisis very well. So when you think back at great leaders and people you and I call heroes, you will find out that our heroes, our great leaders, basically became heroes and great leaders out of crisis situation. So if you are ever going to be a significant hero, if you're ever going to be a significant person of great respect and admirability, if there's any word like that, you are going to learn this. And I think everyone should write this down quickly. Respect is earned on difficult grounds. Respect is earned on difficult grounds. In other words, a leader gains respect from his or her people when it's uphill. A leader gains respect from his or her people when it's dark and they do well. So respect isn't gained on level ground, or on easy ground, or in easy terms. No, respect is always given when you've really brought people through a difficult time. So once again, for your notes, I want you to write this quote. No sailor ever distinguished himself in smooth seas. No sailor ever distinguished himself in a smooth sea. I mean, there's never been a sailor who went out there and said, you know what, today, there were no winds, it was calm. Also, every sailor you know, the only thing that makes them a sailor or how they distinguish themselves is how they battle in rough seas. So what am I saying? Leaders distinguish themselves only during difficult times. So let me give you some crisis comments. Number one, a crisis reveals what is inside of you. A crisis, number one, a crisis reveals what is inside of you. Now, I bet you've heard certain leaders or businessmen make statements like they were made in crisis. No one is ever made in crisis. You were not made in a crisis. You're revealed in crisis. You're revealed in crisis. When you squeeze an orange, you get an orange juice. When you squeeze a lemon, you get lemon juice. So when there is crisis and you're squeezed, what is on the inside of you is what comes out. So when a human being gets squeezed, you get what's inside that person, be it positive or negative. So the crisis does not make us. The crisis reveals us. So when you look at the coronavirus season and this quarantine season, all that is happening is the crisis is revealing who you really are. So here's what I want you to see. Our choices make us, our crisis reveals us, and crisis reveals what we are. So during a crisis, a couple of things that you and I need to know. Number one, you need to believe in yourself. In a crisis, you must believe in yourself. And here's why that is very important. Nothing makes people doubt more than a crisis. Nothing ever makes people doubt more than a crisis. Our world right now is confused because of the coronavirus crisis. And people are doubting themselves and doubting their beliefs and doubting who they really are. Because during a crisis, they're not sure of themselves. They're not sure what's happening. And the tendency for anybody when they're not sure is to make a move. Is not to make a move. They just basically stand still. So believing in you is extremely important during pressure. And the reason for that is no one else believes in themselves, especially in crisis. In fact, what I've discovered is when people have problems, they'll basically pay the price they can to have somebody else take care of their problem. Because most people don't want to handle problems. And so they'll basically surrender whatever they've got to surrender for somebody else to take care of their problems or take care of them. So believing in you as a leader is essential in times of crisis. Now, for your notes again, I want you to write this. You will become on the outside what you believe on the inside. You will become on the outside what you believe on the inside. And why is that? Why would we become on the outside what we believe on the inside? Well, it's a fact. You and I, we cannot live in a way that is inconsistent with our belief in ourselves. It's impossible. You cannot live in a way that's inconsistent with your belief in yourself. The outward behaviors constantly reflects what's on the inside. And it's impossible for a person to consistently behave one way or on the outside and then be different on the inside. It just doesn't happen. Now, can we have lapses? Of course. Can we have bad days? Of course. So I'm not saying there are no blips in our lives or no failures or no mistakes, not at all. You can consistently be behaving in a way that's inconsistent. You can't consistently be behaving in a way that's inconsistent with who you are. You can't consistently be behaving in a way that's inconsistent with who you are. So to believe in you is essential during a crisis because basically everyone else is doubting. Secondly, during a crisis, you have to watch your attitude. That's the second thing I need you to write. During a crisis, watch your attitude. Watch your attitude because that's when people not only stop believing, but they start doubting. They start doubting themselves. They start becoming discouraged. Our attitude is absolutely essential in crisis. For your notes again, I want you to write this down. During tough times, attitude separates successful people from those who do not succeed. During tough times, your attitude would separate successful people from those who do not succeed. Because winning is an inside job. You can write that also. Winning is an inside job. And that's simple. It's a simple little lesson. It means what happens on the inside is just as a result of what's on the inside. What happens on the outside is a result of what happens on the inside. So the first place that you must win in a crisis is inside. What separates successful people from unsuccessful people is not their attitude when things are good. It's not their attitude during good times. It's their attitude during adversity. What will separate you from success and unsuccessful people is your attitude during adversity, your attitude during crisis, your attitude in this lockdown season. Anybody can smile at you when things are going good. Anybody can have a good attitude. But the attitude we have during difficult times, that's the huge separator during a crisis. So in that adversity, how we think and the attitude we carry out, the attitude we have Believing in ourselves is absolutely essential for anybody who calls themselves or wants to be a leader. So let's go to the point number 2. It's our decisions, not our conditions, that determine the quality of life. Our decisions, not our conditions, that would determine the quality of life. This statement is foreign to the average person. The average person thinks it's their conditions. We are all locked down. We are all locked in. We can't go out. They think it's their conditions. I lost my job. This happened. It is not your condition that would determine your quality of life. So let me talk to you in 2 ways here. Number 1, the decisions that you and I need to make before a crisis. And then I want to talk to you about the decisions we need to make after a crisis. Because what's good is if we could make good decisions, if we could make good decisions on the front end, that will not erase the crisis. The crisis will come. We can't choose the crisis we'll find ourselves in. We can't choose what happens to us. But the decisions we make before we find ourselves in a crisis will typically help minimize the crisis if we make the right type of decisions on the front end. So let me give you 3 types of decisions to make before crisis. You take note. Number 1, your values must be defined before a crisis. Number 1, your values define who you are before the crisis gets a chance to define you. Number 1 type of decision you must make before a crisis, your values. Your values define who you are before the crisis gets a chance to define you. Number 2, your mission. What I do. You have to define your purpose before crisis gets to define you, or before a crisis gets a chance to define you. And number 3, responsibility, my responsibility, my response to my ability. It simply talks about what I must do. I must define the kind of things I will do before crisis comes. I'll just tell a quick story. My mentor, John Maxwell, talks about a time when they were on a private jet. When they were on a private jet once, and they were about to crash land. They were about to crash land on the tarmac. And what happened was their plane hit the tarmac sideways. And in that moment, the pilot revved that plane back up. And they got back up in the air. John will tell you that he thought they were all dead. Well, anyway, by the time they landed back, what happened was John can be quite dramatic. So he kissed the floor, he's hugging the pilot, he's loving on everybody, he's afraid, he's shocked that he's alive. And then eventually he went to the pilot and asked the pilot a question. He said to the pilot, he said, how did you know what to do at that point such that you were able to take the plane right back up in the air? And the pilot said, I didn't just make that decision. I made that decision 20 years ago. So I'm talking about the decisions you make before crisis. So this pilot had looked at every possible scenario that could ever happen and had already made a decision. If I ever find myself in this kind of scenario, I'm going to take that plane up. So what decisions are you making way before you find a crisis? Now, a crisis is not just the coronavirus crisis. Some people have a health crisis. Some people have a marriage crisis. Some people have all kinds of financial crises. But if you haven't decided your values, your mission, and your responsibility before a crisis, then the crisis is going to define that for you. So what are the choices then that you make during a crisis? Number 1, for your notes, you have to make courageous decisions. Courageous decisions. And courageous decision is simply just what must be done. Courageous decision on just what must be done. I've discovered that good leaders make things happen during good times. But great leaders would make things happen during bad times. So the difference between good and great is, are you just making decisions in good times? Or do you have the ability, when you find yourself in a crisis, to still be able to make good decisions? So I mean, anybody can lead a parade when it's going in the right direction. Absolutely anybody. Anybody can lead a company. Anybody can lead people when it's doing well. The hardest leadership challenge is taking something that is going the wrong way, stop it going the wrong way, turn it around, and get it going back the right way. That is what a challenge is. The question is not, are we going to be in adversity or are we going to have adversity? That's not the question. The question is what are we going to do during adversity? What are we going to do during a difficult time? What are we going to do during the coronavirus crisis? How are we going to cut the losses? How are we going to stop it? How are we going to turn this lockdown around? Now, for your notes, you can evaluate the size of a person by the size of the problems they are willing to tackle. You would only be able to evaluate the size of a person only by the size of the problems that they are willing to tackle. For your notes again, winners stretch to the challenge. Whiners shrink from the challenge. Winners stretch to the challenge. Whiners shrink from the challenge. So the question I have for you today is this. Are you a winner or you're a whiner? Are you going to stretch to the challenge or are you going to shrink from the challenge? Are you going to stretch in this coronavirus season or are you going to shrink? So courageous decisions must be always made during crisis. The second choice that you need to make during a crisis is priority decisions. You must do what must be done first. Peter Drucker says, first things first, last things not at all. So the question I have for everybody, and I want you to play with me quickly. The question I have for everybody, if you are Noah and the ark is sinking, what animals would you let go first? Go to the chat box quickly. If the ark is sinking and you are Noah, what animals would you let go first? Quickly, quickly. Role play. What animals would you let go first? If you are Noah and the ark is sinking, the bat, really? The bat, all right? Elephants, good. The snakes, really? The ark is sinking. You wouldn't let snakes out? All of them, all of them. If the so the heavy ones, I like that. But could the heavy ones? And that's what we're talking about. So when you find yourself in a crisis, you have to make courageous decisions. You have to do first things first. I will let the rhinos out. I will let the elephants out. That's it. You get those animals. I'm not about to let the ants out. They don't mean anything in an ark. Because the bigger and faster animals are going to have more control over this sinking thing. And that is the same thing. In a crisis, you have to make the right decisions. You have to make the priority decisions. So what do I mean by priority decisions? You have to focus on the things that you can control. You have to focus on the things you can control. I can't control coronavirus. I can't control the weather. But the things I can control, then you focus on that. I can control wearing a mask. I can control making sure my family is safe. So you've got to focus on what you can control. And then most importantly for us as faith people, we have to have faith in God for the things that we can't control. See, we're all going to have losses. In fact, many of us have had recent losses, and we're all going to still have losses tomorrow. We all have losses. The question is not, did you lose? The question is, what did you learn? So in this season, what are you learning from the coronavirus? It's not what did you lose, it's what did you learn? If you learn in your losses, you will minimize your losses. If you don't learn in your losses will continually repeat. So as I begin to try and close, as I'm looking at my time, isn't it interesting that some people go into a crisis and come out of it with hope, and some people then go into the same crisis and there's no hope? Same crisis, same problems, but the difference is perspectives. People that do well because their perspective is different and better than people who don't do well. We'll all have crisis or have been in crisis. A crisis will never leave us the same. I had a major crisis in 2010 with the health of my wife. It's never left me the same. It's affected our finances, it's affected many things. A crisis does not leave you the same. Crisis don't make us who we are. We are already who we are before the crisis came. They reveal who is in you. So if you were not a strong person before a crisis, the crisis is just going to show you up. But when we've had crisis, what's amazing is this. It always gives us an opportunity. It always changes us. No one goes through adversity. No one goes through a crisis. No one goes through adversity without scars. And I've learned that authenticity counts. And the best route to an authentic life is through your scars. So as we end them, you learn to drop the BS in your life and to attach yourself to the substance in your life. Now, many of you heard me say BS. How many of you just judged me? How many of you just judged me? Quickly, confess. In the chat room, I'm listening. You just judged me because you think I said something. When I said BS, I meant belief system. Belief system. Belief system. How many of you judged me? Belief system is what I meant. So please ask God for forgiveness. Buki, Kole, ask God for forgiveness. It's belief system I meant. So you have to learn to drop the BS in your life and to attach yourself to the substance in your life. You should never take yourself too seriously. or get needlessly seduced to short-term materialism. That's a hard lesson in life. Guys, setbacks, just as steel is forged through fire, and leaders like you and I are forged through losses. There can be no strength, no real inner growth without the pain of legitimate suffering. What needs to happen, another question for you as I round up, what needs to happen before you see a rainbow? Type, what needs to happen before you see a rainbow? Quickly, somebody help me. It's call and response. What needs to happen before you see a rainbow? Go on, I'm reading quickly. Got a few minutes more. What needs to happen before you see a rainbow? Dark clouds, go on. Rain and condensation, you are too intelligent for it, that's your problem. Storm, Buki, storm. Everybody wants a rainbow, but people don't want the storm. The storm. If you're ever going to experience rainbow moments, get ready for the storm. And that's what a crisis is. The crisis gives us an opportunity to look forward to the storm. The same way with natural things, when you see the storm, you are guaranteed a rainbow. You are guaranteed a rainbow. I'm telling you, as we go through the coronavirus season, something great is coming out of this season. It's a scientific fact. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm. So you and I want to encourage everyone on this call today. We need to turn our scars into stars. Take our scars, or we take our scars and spend the rest of our lives complaining about how we look and what happened to us. So let me do a quick recap. A crisis is an intense time of difficulty requiring a decision that would be a turning point. Leaders are not made in crisis, they are just revealed. That being the case, during a crisis, number one, believe in yourself, because crises make people doubt. Number two, watch your attitude. Also, remember our decisions, not our conditions, that determine our quality of life. Therefore, number one, make courageous decisions. Do what must be done. Number two, priority decisions. Do what must be done first. Finally, focus on the things you can't control and have faith in God for the things you can control. So questions to ask yourself, and I want you to take notes as I begin to round up. So questions to ask yourself in this season, we find ourselves, how will you use this coronavirus season to get better every day? Ask that question. How would I use this coronavirus season, this lockdown season, to get better every day? Number two, how would I use this season to help other people? This is how we go through this season. How will I use this season to help other people? Number three, what actions would I take to improve my situation? Number one, how will I use this season to get better every day? Number two, how would I use this to help other people? Number three, what actions would I take to improve my situation? Now, I know there are many other questions that could be asked as you navigate yourself through these unprecedented times you and I find ourselves. However, I would like to encourage you every day to set aside a little time every day to ask yourself these questions daily. Create some time every day where you can pause, reflect on these three questions. Intentionally use this time to mold yourself, to create a better life and version of you, not only for yourself, but for our world. And I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you very much.